Hey YouTube folks, welcome to another video on this channel. Get your heart ready because we're going to bring you the conclusion of the World Cup. The champion has arrived and it was decided today in the tiebreakers. The match just ended and the video is fresh out of the oven. And the decision, of course, between them put the images on the screen. EI versus Sindarov. In the match that decides the event, EI was playing with the white pieces. It's a rapid game, 15 minutes plus a 10-second increment. Just a heads up, I'll show images of the game's most dramatic moments. And of course, at the end of it all, the champion leaving the playing hall in triumph. Also, remember that the tournament grants 3 spots for the candidates. EI and Sindarov already have their spots secured. And the 3rd place in the cup was claimed yesterday by Andrei Ezipenko. Now let's see who is actually the champion. But I'm warning you, hold on to your seat, get your popcorn ready. Let's get to the conclusion of everything now. Playing white, Chinese Grandmaster EI faced Sindarov in the cup final where EI dropped the bomb. Equatrier says, Eita, they're playing the Italian opening. Now watch how Sindarov responds. He touches the central pawn, but after d3, he doesn't proceed or use the piano. He plays the bishop e7 line, which is a bit calmer. What is Sindarov saying? He avoids fireworks, craziness with the black pieces, and the bishop. G5 themes of the pin. So here it's still a very technical position. Rock and roll is being played. Now knight moves to c3 and d6 to pressure f3. Sindarov's idea. Time hasn't passed. The wheel isn't being invented. Normal position. Move a4 was played, which is also technical. You don't get it? The light-squared bishop surrenders a2 with bishop to g4. Be careful. There's the threat of knight to d4, of course. The Chinese player didn't fall for that. h3 was played, and Sindarov now gives up the bishop pair. The position is strong. He places the knight on d4, attacks the queen, and c2, and defends everything. Notice the clock hasn't run down since both players remain within their knowledge area. In the early game, Sindarov plays c6, saying the queen can enter here at the right time. Bishop to a2, considering rook to b8 or b5. He moves the bishop here to challenge the bishop on e8, and this is an important improvement in the more technical part of the game. Because the artificial intelligence is preparing the breakthrough with f4, this could become a problem for black. You have to be careful in this kind of situation, but look at Sindarov's reading. He moves the knight to c6, which raises a question. Which one? Are you going to have to give up your pair of bishops so you can make this breakthrough? And the question is whether it's worth it or not. Chess is a balance. You always have to be weighing things. Take a look. If you play f4, I can take it, and you'll lose your bishops. Or you can take here, then play f4, but you'll still lose your bishops. Either way, look at the ideas. Sindarov plays the knight move to c6. This is an important moment in this more technical phase, moving from the opening to the beginning of the middle game. Control of the breaks creates the cup's drama and tension. EI keeps the pair of bishops and plays to rook 1. Rafael Chess, where's he going? EI strengthens the center. He might prepare the idea of d4 ahead. He places the rook on c7 to control the central queen pawn, connects Sindarov's rooks, moves bishop to e3. It's the development phase, and now the move b6 Sindarov's idea isn't so clear at this moment. EI plays queen to f3. The Chinese player's going on the attack, bringing pieces up on the king's side. Sindarov centralizes with rook to d8, preparing the idea of d5 at the right moment. At this moment, the Chinese player makes perhaps the most creative move of the opening phase. He plays h4 Rafael, aiming to attack and preparing for h5. Here, the artificial intelligence actually makes a creative move. It gives the h3 square to the queen. Look at that! He wants to start removing that knight from e6, which controls both central breaks f4 and also d4. He's going to do it. Look at Sindarov's reading, he's already starting to defend. When queen h3 arrives, the black queen already controls everything, including the e6 line. At this moment, Sindarov puts the rook on the e-file. It's also a technical move. He can prepare bishop fianchetto, 8 fianchetto over here. Notice EI's subtlety here. He sees you move the rook from the f-file and immediately captures on e6. Notice that he could have captured back there, but he didn't. Because black still had the rook on the file, so if before all this you capture and the rook is already placed on the file, this here is not the same thing anymore. Now, the scenario after the recapture, EI gives up the bishops, but Sindarov lacks the rook on the file. To use that file, you'll need to spend another move. This subtlety can sometimes go unnoticed. EI plays knight to e2 now. He renews the threats again. And he can also move the knight to g3. And of course, if you prepare a breakthrough on the king's side, Sindarov now breaks through the center. That's a move by the machine. It's a very important moment in the game. Watch the footage as Sindarov makes this move. He has about 11 minutes on the clock, while EI now has 7.5 minutes. And time pressure is always relevant. In chess, well, this move threatens to take on e4. Notice here that EI controls the center with the move knight to g3 and Sindarov. Of course, he spends time, he brings the rook back to the file. He needs to try to use this semi-open file. Here comes EI's second idea of h4. He keeps advancing, prepares h6, and tries to break the pawn structure. On the king's side, Sindarov defended with the move h6 and now EI again. He shows creative chess. He plays rook to e2. This move can serve two purposes. It strengthens the f2 square, but there's more to it. He wants to pressure the e5 pawn structure and double up. Raphael, how does rook to e2 pressure e5? He wants to double up here, bring the bishop back, and at the right moment, he can capture and try to put pressure on this central pawn. A creative idea. But time was running out for the Chinese player. Sindarov plays rook to f7, saying that he can double up too. Along this semi-open file, the move rook to e1 doubles on what appears to be a blocked file. Note again Sindarov's reading of the position. He defends the central pawn. He's always noticing what the long-term plan is that A is setting up ahead. A moves bishop to d2, but the pawn is now well defended. He'll have to increase this tension so that this becomes a problem. And Sindarov doubles the rooks on the f-file, also making progress. And the Chinese player, with very little time on the clock, A brings in another piece. Pressuring e5, he moves bishop to c3, threatening to take. Naturally, after a recapture at the end of the line, the e5 pawn often falls in several positions. Sindarov's move d4 is provoked by Raphael, but now the center is closed. This completely changes the reading of the position from here on. Exactly. Because when the bishop comes back, notice that the closed center leaves little mobility. Both Sindarov's bishop, trapped in the structure, and A's bishop, restricted by dark squared pawns, are limited. Sindarov played c5, and now is the tense moment to stay still and wait to see what new plan will emerge. b3 is played here by the Chinese player, a solid position, and a6. This move, of course, prepares the idea of b5. Here, A is momentarily out of ideas, because if you play b5, I can get to the point of moving the rook to the file that's about to open. For now, the Chinese player stays put, and Sindarov does the same. He already anticipates the idea of b5 with the rook on the file, which could open up rook e7. Both of them are staying put, and A is passing the move. Look, that's interesting. He passes the move, he goes and he comes back. Queen c8 remains in place. The Chinese player clearly has no ideas in this position, and Sindarov takes advantage of this information and breaks through with b5. It's a move that starts to change, of course, the pawn structure, because here comes the exchange. Look at the moment when Sindarov plays b5. It's a move that exploits the Chinese grandmaster's possible lack of ideas. Where will his knight go? And it accelerates terrible breakthroughs on the queen's side. Note that A determines the knight's path. He's keeping an eye on the exchange now of the pair of knights, trusting that his dark-squared bishop will play better than Sindarov's. Now comes the move c4, escalating the position into a terrible drama. And still, the position is opening up with time pressure on the clock. Here come the exchanges. On b5, on c4, now A calls this the endgame. His bishop can play more than Sindarov's bishop, that's what he's saying. Sindarov plays c3 to exchange knights, noting your bishop becomes inactive. And at that moment, Wei exchanges on f6 and plays the bishop move. Both bishops are terrible. But what the Chinese player is saying is that he has a plan. Which one, Raphael? Play f3 and activate the bishop along this diagonal. And Sindarov's bishop, for the moment, doesn't have much perspective. Who will come out on top and handle the dramatic time trouble? Rook moves to f7. Sindarov now has a target. This can't go unnoticed, which is the pawn on c2. This pawn could become a serious weakness in White's position. A continues with the plan to activate his bishop. Now, rook to a7 proposes exchanges, but the Chinese player will decline with rook to d1. Sindarov will then invade with rook to a2, making the position truly dramatic. This is on a knife's edge. Anything can happen. The Chinese grandmaster had 1 minute on the clock. Bishop to h4. He plays. The rook comes to b7, saying he's going to double up, and look at what happens now. After queen to g4, notice that White can start trying to put pressure on the g7 point if you infiltrate with the rook over here. Sindarov defends first. He stops the Chinese player's counterplay, brings the queen back to defend, and after king to h2 holds everything. And he's saying that he's going to start putting pressure on the pawn at c2. It's a very tense moment in the game. Because in this position, again, A doesn't have a clear plan for where he's going. He plays g3, then rook to b2, threatening to capture. Now here is I. He pre-moves rook to c1 with just 30 seconds left. Check the images. He positions himself on defense, holding on. Sindarov has a minute and a half. A has less than 40 seconds, and that's how the cup is. Here it's all heart, nerves on edge. Well, at this moment, Sindarov also can't make any progress. He moves his king. A now plays king g2, moving here too. The rook returns to b8, showing both are out of ideas. Nothing significant is happening now. At this moment, rook to f1 comes in. Here, A is preparing for 4. This is the first moment when the Chinese player starts to take more and more risks. He wants to open up the king's side, that's what he's saying. Sindarov called the bluff and stood firm. Then came move f4, the game's key moment. Because here, A is taking a lot of risks. His king could end up being even more vulnerable than the black king. For now, the plan seems fine. Sindarov accepted it and can't refuse. After the move, f5 attacks the bishop, which retreats to f4. With an attack on the queen and a brutal doubling coming down the f-file, queen e8 is played by Sindarov. Of course, the doubling comes. It looks like a scary position. Notice that the queen can come to e4. The black king isn't much safer than the white king, Sindarov. Sindarov needs to be more careful. I have rook a1 and plan to double both rooks on the 8th rank. This is risky, and time was running out. It's a terrible drama. In the cup, the Chinese grandmaster plays queen f3, touches the rook after rook b1, then plays queen e4 and king g8. I'm not sure who's better here. Look, there are serious threats on the 8th, and the black king is very exposed. If the bishop moves, I can come in here at the right time. And in this position, there's a threat. Sindarov threatens to take that pawn. And the Chinese player, he defended with 11 seconds on the clock. It's a scary moment here, again. A cup that can, in fact, be decided. In a hurry, Sindarov moves the rook to h1. He threatens that bishop, ei holds the king on a razor's edge. And now comes this threat to the queen, and ei wants to trade a bit. Let's dry it out. Let's simplify. This position could calm down, but that's not going to happen here. That exchange actually happened. And now, maybe the most technical and most important move. With just 16 seconds left, watch the move Sindarov made in this opening phase. He plays bishop to e7. This move is brutally precise. Why does he want to exchange the bishops? Notice that you can't refuse your bishop. It's blocked. This is going to happen. But after the exchange, look, the weakening of the dark squares is dramatic in this position. Ei had 20 seconds left. This is the move of a lifetime, and right now, he makes a serious mistake, a mistake that I dare say is impossible not to make. Rafaelcabral. What's happening in a position like this? What was the best move? The best move was king. G2 moving away from the check theme isn't obvious. Here, it feels like you're lost or about to be checkmated. The only move to save white here is a brilliant defensive move that, of course, the artificial intelligence can find. He has already found brilliant defensive moves like this in this tournament. But if you rely on finding a line like this with seconds left, what's the point? You sacrifice the rook for a perpetual. Look at the black king, he's in trouble, and you rely on this. In the worst case, if the queen returns, notice the rook is vulnerable on this side. So here you would have this drawing line. With little time left, you can't find it. I said this pawn is falling and took it. But now he allows this queen entry with the loose rook, and here the outcome is already set. He comes in with queen to h4. When the king dodges, the rook attacks the queen. As the queen defends, queen to g5 delivers check and targets the loose rook. On d4, she'll fall and you'll lose your rook. And at that moment, the great Chinese grandmaster resigned from this dramatic match. With nerves on edge, Sindarov is the great champion of the World Cup. The young talent from Bextau makes his mark in history and conquers the grand final of the Cup. You are clearly seeing there the moment of abandonment. You can also see how cold the great master EI is. Even with all this tension, he doesn't show any emotions. After losing the World Cup, his name is Sindarov, the great champion. You can also see Cinderovic leaving the game room, greeted there by friends and family. With the World Cup title, the young talent from Bexto, who will take part in the next candidates tournament, could in fact be the next world champion. History is being written, and it's being written right before our eyes. Rita on air, both playing with machine-like precision. A match that was also decided in the rush of the clock. The tie breaks in rapid. Everyone knew this could end up happening. The game's mistake was rook to d4 yes, results are uncertain. Sindarov wins 2.5 to 0.5 against the Chinese Grandmaster. EI also showed that he is a player of great talent who can also go on to be the candidate's champion. Both players will be in that tournament. We will follow all of this in detail, its history being written, and we're here to watch it unfold. Thank you very much for following the Cup. I hope you enjoyed the coverage. If you did, don't forget to like, and see you in the next video, Zanato.